Hello, welcome to Lunch with Lynne. Today I'm working on the January table topper, and I wanted to show you how to do the quilting for the little borders, the inner border here, and also your outer borders. So as you can see, I'm using a jumbo hoop on this Bernina 790. I have added my two short borders, and I've added the long border, and you can add these as you can see from here. And so I'm going to add another one. We're doing a 1 inch by 12. And then you can move it either with your stylus or your finger so that you can put all of these in one hooping. And I'm going to, see, I can move it around however I need to, and I can adjust so that none of them are on top of the other. So once I've gotten all of these done, I can also go down to number 1, which will show all of them in the hoop at the same time and make sure that they're not overlapping. So now I'm ready to do the borders. So when you're quilting these, you want to hoop your stabilizer. This is a simple cutaway. This is the fabric we're using. It is a gray fabric, and I have cut it just a little bit larger than what is needed, and I have backed it with a stabilizer. So I have loaded my white thread into the machine, and I'm going to allow it to do my first outline. Now that my first line is down, I'm going to place my fabric that has been backed, making sure that it covers all of my placement lines. As you can see, I've made it a little bit larger than the placement lines so that it will be securely held down. Now that you've got your first placement line down, you're going to put down your batting, making sure that it covers all of the line, and allow the machine to stitch it down. Now on the batting, the machine will go around twice to ensure that it is secured to the stabilizer. So once the machine has finished tacking down your batting, you can then trim as close to the stitch line as you can, being very careful not to cut your stitch line. You want your batting to remain securely stitched down to your stabilizer. Now that you have your batting trimmed up, you're going to tell the machine to stitch the placement line for your fabric. Now the first one that I'm doing is the shorter one. I'm going to do a quick run around so that I can place my fabric. So you want to take your fabric that has been backed with your fusible backing. You want to make sure that it covers as much of the placement line as possible. Now I do cut these a little bit oversized. You will notice that here in the pattern it calls for the background to be 1 3/4 by 10 1/2, and I have actually cut them almost 2 by 11 just to make sure that I have enough to cover the placement lines, because when it stitches it down, I want it to be securely stitched down so that as it's quilting, the fabric is still while it's quilting. You will notice that the machine is only going to go down each side of the fabric and is not going to run across the bottom. So you can tape these down, or you can just be very careful, mindful of where your fingers are. So you'll notice that your fabric is secure, and now it is ready to start the quilting. So you just tell the machine to quilt. And we are using the Cuties quilting design. This one is a diamond quilt with little circles on the inside. This can be purchased at KImberbell.com. If you decide to buy the background quilting, please go to lollysquiltshop.com and use our KImberbell affiliate link. It does help the shop if you purchase through our affiliate link when you buy from KImberbell. As you can see, this process goes very quickly. Of course, these will be just about a 1-inch border, and I will trim them down once they are all done. As you can see, the first one is completed. So now I'm going to ask the machine to go ahead and do the stitch for the batting for the second one. And when you're quilting these, any fabric scrap that you have is perfect. The batting scraps that you get when you've had a quilt quilted, or just any batting scraps that you have, work perfect for this type of project. It's a great way to use them up. So now I'm going to tell the machine to go ahead and tack down my batting. Again, it will go around the batting twice. Now once it's gone around twice, I'm going to trim the batting as close to the placement lines as possible. Now that I've got my second one trimmed, I'm going to tell the machine I'm ready for it to do the placement line for the fabric. Again, I have my fabric already cut out and backed. Again, placing your fabric, making sure that it covers your placement lines. And you're going to allow the machine to stitch it down. Now, if you're worried about getting this stable, you can tape these. The KImberbell paper tape works very well for this and will hold it down securely. And again, it will only go down the sides. So that it is held securely. Now I'm going to let the machine do the quilting down the center, and then we're going to repeat this 2 more times for our longer strips that we have here. Now you can see that I have all 4 of my borders completed. Now, this is the January table topper that we are doing, and we will be having our first monthly club on December the 8th here at Lolly's Quilt Shop. This is what the table topper is going to look like. What I have done today is I have finished quilting these borders that will go around the center, which I've already put together. So all I have left to do now is take these out, trim them to size, and then I'm going to sew them so that my center is complete. Now I always suggest buying the largest hoop that your machine will use. This Bernina B790 will use this jumbo hoop, although as you can see here, it does keep a little piece of it because the 880 can use the entire hoop that you have here. So once we cut these out, we'll trim them to size so that they can go around the center border. And These can be double hooped, and the next Lunch with Lynne, we will try to show you how to, or I will show you how to do double hooping, so that if you don't have a large hoop, these can still be quilted on your machine. Again, this is Lunch with Lynne at Lolly's Quilt Shop, and thank you so much for participating. So in the last segment we talked about doing these borders, and these borders were small enough to be done in one hooping because I had a large hoop. I was using the jumbo hoop on the Bernina B790. As you can see, they're perfectly quilted and look very nice around my center, and I've added my snowmen. Now the outer border that I'm doing now requires 2 hoopings. So the first hooping is done the same way as we did the inner border. As you can see, I've already done the first hooping on this outer border. Now I have also made this longer than what I actually need. What I need is 18 inches. These are 21. So what I'm doing is I have already done the first one, and you can see I've cut very close to the end of the where it has quilted on here. Now this next quilting pattern is a little bit longer than what I need. So what I have here is 11 inches, and I only need 7 more because my first 2 borders need to be 18 inches long to go along the top here and to fit. So I'm now going to do the placement for the second part of the quilting. Now unfortunately I did not have a 2-inch by 8-inch, I only had a 2-inch by 10-inch. And so this turned out to be about 11 inches long, and I do have a 1/4 inch seam allowance here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to measure this, and I'm going to place a mark at 7 inches. And the reason I'm doing this is because I would really like to keep the bulk of the backing or the batting out of my seam. Now if you don't mind the bulk, it's no problem. You can just allow it to go the full length. So here, as you can see, I've already pre-cut a piece a little bit larger than what I need, just so that I have space to get my stitches on the batting. Because we want the batting to be tacked down well to the stabilizer. You do want to make sure that the presser foot does not pick your batting up and cause it to be bent. Now that the machine has finished tacking down my batting, I'm going to trim the excess that I have as close as I can to the stitches without cutting them. Try to be very careful not to cut your stitches, because you want your batting to remain tacked down to your stabilizer. Now as you can see, I've trimmed my batting, and I'm going to take this piece that has already been partially quilted, and you can see where the batting is trimmed very close to that quilting. And so I'm going to butt this end of the batting as tightly as I can and as squarely as I can to the batting that we have just tacked down. So you can tape this in place or hold it in place, and then you're going to want to pull your fabric down, making sure that this is still nice and square and even. So once I've got this down, I'm going to hold it, or you can tape it, being very careful about where your fingers are. And we're going to allow it to tack down our fabric. Now once our fabric has been tacked down, we're ready to do our quilting. And so you're going to let the machine run the quilting. And as you can see on this first piece, the quilting butts up very nicely. If you've got it lined up, it will line up almost perfectly with the first set. As you can see, we've lined it up well. The points are just touching the points on the previous quilting. So now you just allow your machine to run, and don't worry about it coming off of the stabilizer down here, because we're going to, at the end of the batting, we're going to cut a 1/4 inch seam allowance. And as I said, this was longer than what I actually needed. As you can see, as long as you are very careful about how you place the first piece and butt it up against the batting of the second piece, your quilting will look seamless even though you have double hooped it. It's very hard to see that there was any place. And now we're ready to trim this up so that it will have a 1/4 inch seam allowance on each side, a 1/4 inch seam allowance on top and bottom, and I can now cut it to the exact size that I want. And as you can see, my batting should not be in my seam allowance. This one's a little bit long, but that should be okay. So that's how you double hoop when you want to quilt a border. Very simple. Thank you for watching Lunch with Lynne at Lolly's Quilt Shop.